Imagine a world where society functions perfectly. Like there is no war, no famine, and absolutely zero economic collapse or, political gridlock.
Right, just total undisturbed stability.
Exactly. Everything runs like this brilliantly engineered, well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
But to achieve that absolute unshakable perfection, this society had to make some, well, very specific compromises.
And they are pretty massive compromises, to be honest.
Oh, huge. I mean, first they had to completely eliminate traditional family structures.
Yeah.
Second, they had to severely marginalize one entire gender, basically pushing them to the absolute fringes of civilization.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. And perhaps most surprisingly, they had to deliberately freeze their own technological advancement in the distant past, like actively suppressing any sort of innovation.
Yeah, it's a huge trade-off.
It really is. So my question for you, the listener, is would you take that deal? It is the ultimate utopian wager. You basically trade the messy, unpredictable, and, let's face it, often painful nature of human progress for absolute stability. And that is exactly the massive biological and sociological thought experiment we are doing a deep dive into today. We're looking at a really dense stack of source material, including excerpts and some incredibly detailed analytical breakdowns of a sci-fi epic set entirely on the world of Stratos.
And it's such a rich world to unpack.
It really is. The core of this text is an exploration of what the author terms the struggle for variety. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this meticulously constructed world and, explore what happens when stability morphs into stagnation.
Right.
And why, mathematically and biologically speaking, a society actually needs a certain degree of chaos just to survive.
It's a fascinating premise, honestly, because the text doesn't rely solely on, political philosophy or economic theory to explore that need for chaos.
Yeah, it goes deeper than that.
Exactly. It roots the entire societal structure in biology. The literal physical bodies of the inhabitants dictate the laws of their world.
So let's set the stage for you. If you were to drop down onto the surface of the planet Stratos, you would find yourself in a deeply pastoral, very low-tech environment.
Very, agrarian.
Right. Picture hand-woven clothing, rudimentary sailing vessels, endless farmlands. But the most striking anomaly isn't the technology, it's the population.
Yeah, this is where it gets really distinct.
Totally. The planet is populated almost entirely by female clones. And they don't live in what we would consider nuclear families at all.
No, not even close.
They live these massive institutionalized structures called clans, or sometimes they refer to them as hives, and each hive is entirely organized around a specific trade or profession.
So it's heavily segmented.
Exactly. So you have a hive of weavers, a hive of builders, a hive of farmers. You are basically looking at generations of genetically identical women passing down exact, undeviating skills over centuries.
What's fascinating here is the specific biological engine driving this entire societal architecture.
Yeah, because it's not magic, right?
Right. It's science fiction rooted in actual biology. The source text explicitly notes that the reproductive system of Stratos was inspired by the real-world biological cycles of aphids.
Okay, let's unpack this. Aphids. You mean like the tiny green insects that swarm my garden in the spring?
Yeah, those exact ones.
How on earth does a complex human society model itself after a garden pest? I mean, that sounds completely bizarre.
It sounds totally bizarre until you really look at the sheer evolutionary brilliance of the aphid life cycle.
Okay, lay it on me.
So aphids possess this survival mechanism that is perfectly adapted to exploiting resources. During the spring and summer, when environmental conditions are optimal, the weather is good, food is practically infinite, they reproduce through cloning.
Wait, really? Just straight cloning?
Yeah, parthenogenetic cloning. It is wildly efficient. One single aphid can spawn an entire army of genetic copies in a matter of days just to consume the available resources. There's no need to waste precious energy, finding a mate or courting.
Because if the environment is stable and perfect, your current genetic code is already the perfect tool for the job.
Right.
Like, why mess with success?
Precisely. If the puzzle isn't changing, don't change the shape of the puzzle piece. But here is the critical pivot. When autumn approaches, or when the specific plant they are feeding on starts to wither and die, basically, when they experience environmental stress.
When the stability breaks down.
Exactly. When the conditions are no longer perfectly stable, the aphids undergo a radical biological shift. They suddenly switch over to sexual reproduction.
Ah, I see. Because sexual reproduction scrambles the genetic deck.
Yes. It creates genetic variety. Cloning is the ultimate strategy for dominating a completely stable, predictable environment. But variety is the absolute only insurance policy a species has against a changing environment.
Right, because if a new disease sweeps through that kills one clone, it kills every single one of them.
Exactly. But if you have genetic variation, some individuals might have a natural immunity. So the novel takes this biological reality, this constant oscillation between cloning for stability and sexual reproduction for adaptability, and it extrapolates it into the foundational social system of human beings on Stratos.
And the mechanics of how they do this on Stratos are incredibly specific. They utilize a form of parthenogenetic cloning, like you mentioned. The females do require male genetic material to physically start the reproductive process, but, and this is key, the male DNA isn't actually incorporated into the child.
Right, it's just a catalyst.
Exactly. The resulting offspring is an exact 100% genetic clone of the mother. So within the strict social hierarchy of this planet, the clones represent absolute, unquestioned stability.
They are the foundation.
But occasionally, just like the aphids in autumn, sexual reproduction does happen. The DNA actually mixes, and those rare children represent change.
Which brings us directly to the protagonist of our source material. We follow a young woman named Maya and her twin sister Lee.
Right.
They are what Stratoin society labels VARs, which is short for summer variants. They are the offspring of that very rare genetically mixed sexual reproduction. They are not clones.
And that single biological fact fundamentally alters their existence from the literal second they take their first breath. I mean, they are born into a hive, but they are not exact copies of the hive mother.
They are entirely unique.
Right. They possess unique DNA. Okay, let's unpack this. If the clones are like a company's reliable legacy employees doing things exactly as they've always been done, the VARs are the unpredictable, risky new hires.
That's a really great way to look at it.
Yeah, because they might have a brilliant new idea or they might, burn the whole building down. And because they are intrinsically different, society treats them as second-class citizens. They are absolute outsiders in a culture that literally worships sameness.
It's so important to understand how that biological rule translates into a very harsh, practical reality for Mia and Lai. Because growing up as a VAR in a clone hive isn't just a matter of feeling slightly out of place at the family dinner table.
Oh, no, not at all.
It comes with a hard, non-negotiable expiration date.
Yeah, let's look at that exile mechanism because it's brutal. The biological rules of Stratos dictate their social laws with absolute rigidity. When a VAR reaches adolescence, which the Stratoin calendar marks as 5 years, but the source notes that translates to roughly 15 Earth years, they are quite literally physically exiled from their clone family homes.
Yeah, 15 years old and you are just handed your walking papers.
Exactly. Kicked out the door. It appears incredibly cruel from our perspective.
It does, but within the internal, economic logic of Stratos, it is seen as an absolute necessity.
How so?
Well, the hive's survival, its economic dominance in whatever trade it practices, depends entirely on unyielding consistency. A VAR, by definition, is inconsistent.
Right, they are the wild cards.
Exactly. They might have totally different desires or different aptitudes or genetic predispositions that just don't align with the hive's singular purpose. Like, if a farming hive produces a VAR who is genetically predisposed to be a brilliant engineer, keeping her in the farming hive introduces friction.
Oh, absolutely. She would question the traditional methods. She'd want to invent a tractor.
Right. She will want to innovate. And on Stratos, innovation actively threatens the stability of the entire societal machine.
So they keep the clone daughters because they are the perfect legacy employees to seamlessly inherit the family business. And they just jettison the VARs out into the world to fend for themselves.
Sink or swim.
Yeah. So here we have Maya and Lai, these 15-year-old twins, suddenly totally adrift. They have to formulate a survival strategy, and their plan is, honestly, highly logical for their age.
It is.
They resolve to stick together, find a niche in the world where their unique, non-clone skills are actually valued, and eventually build enough wealth to start their very own clan.
It's a solid dream.
It is. So they look at the board and they decide to head for the docks to look for work on cargo ships. But to really grasp why they choose the sea, we have to deeply examine the gender power dynamics of this world.
Oh, this is a crucial piece of the world building. The Society of Stratos operates on a complete structural reversal of historical Earth-based patriarchy.
Right.
Because the entire civilization is architected around female clones, parthenogenetic reproduction, and the unbroken continuity of the maternal line, Women, specifically clone women, hold absolute political, economic, and social power.
They're the landowners, the politicians, the corporate executives.
Exactly.
Which leaves men where? Exactly.
Well, men are structurally severely marginalized. They are confined to a significantly lower social status. They have absolutely no political voice within their lives.
Wow.
But, any complex society requires a release valve. Men on Stratos do have specific spheres of autonomy, and the primary domain allowed to them is the ocean. Yes, the seas of Stratos, the maritime trade, the physical movement of cargo across these really dangerous waters, that is largely the domain of men.
Which honestly makes perfect, ruthless sense when you think about it. If you are deliberately architecting a society based on safe, predictable, pastoral stability on the land, what do you do with the unpredictable, chaotic elements?
You push them away.
Exactly. You push them in, and by extension, the outcast VARs out to the most dangerous, unpredictable, uncontrollable margins of your world, the ocean. The sea is the literal physical manifestation of the societal fringe.
It really is.
So the twins head out to this fringe, to the docks, looking for employment.
And this is where the specific mechanics of societal prejudice are really put on display in the source material.
Yeah, it's tough to read.
They approach the ship captains, who are men, seeking passage and work. But every single captain flatly refuses to hire the twins as a pair.
I found this detail incredibly telling. Because it's not that the captains think they can't do the physical work, right?
No, not at all. The captains refuse because they regularly carry wealthy clone passengers, and it, quote-unquote, looks bad to the elites to see lowly VARs working alongside clones.
It's all about optics.
Completely. And even worse, it looks bad to see VARs working together in a coordinated way that suggests they have their own solidarity or their own internal loyalty outside the sanctioned hive structure.
The stigma is that profound. It's not just about economic utility. It's about the visual maintenance of the strict hierarchy.
Yes.
Even out on the chaotic margins of the sea, the social order dictated by the land-based hives must be strictly performed and visually maintained. Allowing VARs to form their own micro-community on a ship is seen as a visual threat to clone supremacy.
Exactly.
So the sisters, who share identical DNA with each other even though they don't share with their hive, who have relied entirely on each other for 15 years, are forcibly separated onto different ships.
It's a heartbreaking moment.
It really is.
Right.
And, I have to pause here and challenge this entire world-building premise for a moment based on the source's background notes.
Go for it.
The text explicitly states this society was originally designed as an ideal world, right? A utopia founded by female separatists millennia ago.
That's the lore, yes.
So if this was supposedly designed as an ideal world by female separatists, why is it so relentlessly, systematically brutal to its own children just because they have unique DNA? I mean, it sounds less like a utopia and way more like a rigid, inescapable caste system.
That tension you are identifying is exactly the central engine of the thought experiment. The analytical sources emphasize that the novel is exploring the very dark, inevitable underbelly of any separatist ideal.
Okay, how so?
Well, utopias, historically and in literature, are almost always built on the mechanism of exclusion. For the clones to maintain their peaceful, perfectly predictable paradise free from war and famine, they have to fiercely, almost violently protect it from the messy necessity of change.
And the VARs are change personified.
Exactly. The VARs are the physical embodiment of that change. They are the variable in the equation, so the brutality isn't a flaw in the system. The brutality is a load-bearing pillar of the system.
Wow. So to keep the inside clean, you have to throw the dirt outside.
That's a grim way to put it, but yes. And the text layers in a fantastic bit of literary irony here regarding the twins' names, which speaks to their doomed optimism.
All right, the name origins.
Yeah, Maya and Leah are actually named after characters from a classic Earth novel who attempted a very similar optimistic plan to stick together, conquer a hostile world, and find their own way. And in that classic novel, they failed tragically.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's a subtle structural foreshadowing embedded in the text that their naive plan to beat this rigid society at its own game is doomed before they even untie the mooring lines.
And that doom arrives with terrifying speed. I mean, we transition from the cold, bureaucratic cruelty of the societal rules directly into the raw, physical brutality of the planet's environment.
They leave the rigid order of the land and are immediately subjected to the utter chaos of the sea.
Right. So while they are at sea on their separate ships, this massive catastrophic storm hits. Maya's ship is completely wrecked. She barely survives. washing ashore battered and broken.
She loses everything.
But the physical injuries pale in comparison to the news she receives when she's on land. The ship was caught in the exact same tempest. Her twin sister is reported missing and presumed dead.
It's devastating.
It is. Maya is grieving. She is physically compromised, and with her sister gone, her entire, carefully laid strategy for survival has totally evaporated. She is entirely, uniquely alone in a world designed for identical multitudes.
Which is the worst place to be on Stratos.
Exactly. And to simply survive, she is forced to take a menial, bone-crushing job working on a coastal railroad.
This descent into grueling, physical industrial labor really strips away any romantic illusion the reader might have about, the freedom of the open road for a VAR.
Yeah, it's not a fun adventure anymore.
No, it highlights the incredibly precarious, completely unprotected status of VARs. They possess zero safety net. There is no hive to return to when things go wrong.
You're just on your own.
Exactly. And this period of Maya's life ties directly into the overarching theme and the actual title of the work, which revolves around the concept of a glory season.
Oh, right. Let's define that, because glory season sounds wonderful, but it's actually highly complex in the context of the book.
Very.
Biologically speaking, the glory season is the specific window of time when the female population is receptive to sexual reproduction, right?
On a purely biological level, yes. It is the designated, biologically mandated time for the genetic deck to be shuffled. But the source analysis notes that the author uses glory season as a massive overarching metaphor for the entirety of the VAR experience.
How does that metaphor work?
Well, it represents the human experience of growth. It is a time of profound, terrifying change. It is a period of extreme danger, vulnerability, and deep permanent loss. Maya's loss of her twin sister is the ultimate brutal realization of the danger inherent in stepping outside the safety of the clone structure.
It's really the lowest point of her existence. She is doing this back-breaking labor on this railroad, actively mourning her sister, totally marginalized. But it's exactly here, at the absolute bottom of the societal ladder, that she stumbles into a discovery that has global implications.
Because the people at the bottom see the things the people at the top ignore.
Exactly. She uncovers a massive conspiracy.
And we are not just talking about a minor political scandal. This is a societal-level conspiracy aimed at the biological foundations of the planet itself.
Yes. While working the rail lines, she discovers that a highly placed clone courier is secretly utilizing the rail network to run illegal drugs. But these aren't like recreational narcotics.
No, far from it.
We are talking about highly specialized, biochemically engineered pharmaceuticals designed specifically to disrupt the carefully controlled seasonal cycles of male sexual receptivity.
Think about the massive implications of that. If you artificially disrupt those reproductive cycles, you are threatening the entire biological equilibrium of Stratos.
Because you're stopping the VARs from being born.
Exactly. The balance between clones, representing stability, and VARs, representing adaptability, is carefully managed by these seasons. Disrupting it is basically a form of biological warfare.
And the faction behind this biological warfare absolutely blew my mind. I'm looking at the notes, and the culprits are a shadowy political group known as the Perkinites.
The Perkinites. Now, it is crucial that we look at how the source material frames this group impartially, because it connects to some really interesting real-world literary history.
Oh, right, the name.
Yes. The text notes that this faction is specifically named after Charlotte Perkins Gilman. For those who might not know, she was the real-world author of the famous 1915 feminist utopian novel called Herland.
And Herland also depicted an isolated society composed entirely of women who reproduce via parthenogenesis, right?
Exactly. So within the context of this specific sci-fi universe, the author uses the Perkinites to represent a reactionary, highly extremist wing of Stratorn politics.
I have to interject here, because looking at their motives, it seems like a massive paradox. What is their actual endgame goal with these drugs?
Their ultimate objective is to push the planet's founding genetic engineering to its absolute most radical logical extreme. They want to systematically eliminate men from Stratos entirely.
Has to wipe them out.
Yes. They view any reliance on male genetic material, even if it's just the biological spark required to initiate the parthenogenetic cloning we talked about, as a fatal vulnerability.
Oh, I get it. To the Perkinites, men represent the lingering threat of chaos.
Precisely. They are the threat of unpredictable genetic mixing. To achieve perfect, unassailable stability for the clone hives, they believe they must eradicate the male variable entirely.
So they are attempting to achieve a perfect, stable utopia by committing slow biological genocide.
That's their political agenda.
We obviously aren't endorsing or condemning this fictional political stance, but it is fascinating to see how the text uses them as the central ideological conflict. Basically as how far will a society go to protect its own comfort?
It's a terrifying question.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Maya, who has been treated like absolute garbage by this society her whole life, still fundamentally believes in the rule of law.
She's idealistic in that way.
Yeah. She does what she thinks is her civic duty. She takes this evidence of the drug running and reports the plot to the Planetary Equilibrium Authority. She thinks she's exposing the bad guys and saving the day.
Which is a huge mistake.
A massive mistake. Because instead of being rewarded or protected, it turns out the authorities are utterly compromised. Maya is immediately kidnapped by the Perkinites, dragged away in the night, and thrown into a dark, subterranean prison cell.
It's the ultimate subversion of the standard hero's journey trope.
Truly, no good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly. Especially for a marginalized VAR who inadvertently kicks a hornet's nest in the middle of a massive ideological war she doesn't even fully understand. The system she tried to protect just immediately consumes her.
So now Maya is rotting in this pitch-black cell. She's lost her sister, she's lost her freedom, and it genuinely feels like the narrative end of the line for her. Like, how does she get out of this?
It seems hopeless.
It does.
Yeah.
But her imprisonment actually serves as the crucible that introduces a force capable of shattering the entire paradigm of Stratos. It's what sci-fi fans call the ultimate outside context problem.
Yes, I love that term. In sociology and systems theory, an outside context problem is a challenge so far outside a society's existing frame of reference that they cannot even conceptualize it, let alone prepare for it.
Like an asteroid hitting the dinosaurs.
Exactly. When a closed system, like the biological and social loop of Stratos, is perfectly rigidly balanced, internal forces rarely change it. The only thing that can truly disrupt a perfectly balanced closed system is a profound shock from completely outside that system's boundaries.
And that shock arrives right through the prison wall. Maya is sitting in the dark, and she starts noticing these faint electrical signals. Someone in the neighboring cell is tapping out a communication code on the wiring.
A lifeline.
Yeah, and it happens to be an old sailor's code she learned at sea. She manages to tap back, and over days, they form this desperate, really intense bond through the solid wall. Now, because of the strict gender segregation and the rules of her world, Maya naturally assumes the prisoner on the other side is a woman.
Right, why would she think otherwise?
It doesn't even cross her mind.
Yeah.
But eventually, they coordinate this chaotic, highly dangerous escape. The wall comes down, they break out, and in the light of the escape, she looks at her fellow prisoner for the first time.
And
It's a man. His name is Rena.
the source material makes it clear immediately. Rena is not just a random sailor who got on the wrong side of the Perkinites. Rena is an emissary. He is an explorer from something called the human phylum.
The human phylum, I mean, the name alone suggests a massive scale.
It does. The human phylum represents the wider, incredibly high-tech interstellar human civilization. Yes, this is the civilization that originally founded the colony of Stratos thousands of years ago, before the founders of Stratos made the deliberate, ideological choice to sever all communications, isolate the planet, and intentionally devolve their own technology back to an agrarian level.
So he's from the outside.
Rena is literally the first contact from the stars in millennia.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Rena's sudden arrival is a massive existential earthquake for this planet.
It is monumental. His very existence forces every single faction on Stratos, the conservative clone hives, the marginalized VARs, the extremist Perkinites, to confront a stark, terrifying binary choice.
Which is?
Do they violently maintain their isolation, remaining a pastoral, low-tech society completely frozen in biological time? Or do they open their doors, accept the chaos of the wider universe, and rejoin the advanced human civilization?
And for Maya, this political earthquake is deeply, profoundly personal. She and Rena have escaped together, they are on the run, and they form this incredible platonic friendship.
It's a really great dynamic.
Think about what this does to her worldview. Think of it like a peasant from the Middle Ages, forming a survival pact with an astronaut from the 21st century.
That's a perfect analogy.
It fundamentally shatters every single assumption Maya has ever held about reality. Rena comes from a universe where men and women possess equal social standing, where the concept of a genetic clone caste is horrifying to him, And most importantly, where technology is used to solve problems instead of biological engineering.
It is a true collision of paradigms. I mean, Maya has spent her entire 15 years of life internalizing her inherent inferiority as a VAR.
Yeah, society drilled it into her.
Her society has told her she is a mistake, a chaotic variable that needs to be pushed away. But Rena looks at her and doesn't see a VAR or a clone. He just sees a capable, intelligent human being.
Which is huge for her.
It is. That external validation from an outsider is the ultimate catalyst for her intellectual awakening. He basically deprograms her.
But, you know, the narrative doesn't give them the luxury of just sitting around a campfire philosophizing about interstellar gender politics.
Unfortunately not.
Because the moment they escape that prison, they are immediately dumped into a brutal macro-political war.
Their escape effectively turns them into the two most valuable assets on the entire planet, throwing them right into the center of a tangled web of Stratoan factions. And the source analysis specifically praises the novel here for entirely avoiding simple good versus evil tropes.
Yeah, the politics are messy, just like real life.
Exactly.
Really is a mess of gray areas. Maya and Rena managed to link up with a political faction known as the Rads, which is short for radicals. The Rads are the idealistic ones. They are the faction that actively wants to rejoin the human phylum.
They want the progress.
Right. They look at the stars and want the high technology, the medicine, the end of the planet's self-imposed isolation. So on paper, they sound like the obvious good guys of the story.
But the text is very careful to show that the Rads are not perfect heroes. They are desperate, and they are severely outgunned.
Yeah, they're the underdogs.
And their enemies are incredibly complex. The Rads, who are protecting Maya and Rena, are being hunted across the oceans by pirates.
Okay, we have to unpack this, because on Stratos, piracy isn't just a rogue criminal enterprise happening in the shadows.
No, it's a recognized institution.
Exactly. It is a legally tolerated, practically sanctioned profession. It's a recognized, necessary part of the social and economic ecosystem, basically serving as a violent check and balance on maritime power.
Right.
And right now, these state-sanctioned pirates have formed a temporary, highly dangerous alliance with the extremist Perkinites.
Talk about strange bedfellows.
Totally. You have the ultimate traditionalist extremists teaming up with the ultimate agents of chaos, purely to stop the planet from opening up to the stars.
They both fear what Rena represents.
And this tangled web leads to one of the most psychologically wrenching betrayals in the entire story. The Rads are fleeing on their ship, and they are caught. There's this massive, violent boarding action. The pirates literally swarm the Rads' vessel.
It's chaos.
It's hand-to-hand combat on the deck. And during the sheer terror of this battle, Maya is fighting for her life. She locks eyes with one of the attacking pirates.
And it is a lie.
Her identical twin sister. The sister she spent months mourning, the sister she was absolutely certain had drowned in the shipwreck.
She is alive.
She is alive. But the joy of that realization lasts for roughly a microsecond. Because Lai is holding a weapon, fighting for the enemy.
It's such a brutal twist.
We learned that Lai did survive the wreck, but the trauma of it, combined with the sheer, unforgiving harshness of surviving as a VAR on the margins, has completely hardened her. She didn't find the idealistic Rads, she found the pirates.
She adapted to the violence.
Exactly. She embraced the brutality of the world. She has chosen a path of power and violence that puts her fundamentally ideologically at odds with Maya. They share the exact same DNA, they were born at the exact same moment, but their environmental experiences have placed them on opposite sides of a literal war.
It is a devastating emotional climax. Lai was the singular person in the entire universe who understood Maya, the only one who shared her genetic code.
Their whole dream was to do it together.
Right. Their entire childhood dream was to conquer the society together. And now, Lai is an active participant in the pirate force that violently captures Rena and brutally defeats Maya's allies.
It's tragic.
It is. It's a profound demonstration of the novel's themes regarding environment versus genetics.
And the pirates, victorious, have to decide what to do with Maya. They don't execute her, which almost seems merciful. But what they actually do is arguably worse in a strategic sense.
They maroon her.
Yes. They take Maya, along with a few surviving prisoners, most notably a highly competent, pragmatic bosun's mate named Naron, and they just dump them on a completely uncharted, deserted island. They leave them on the beach and sail away.
In the metaphorical game of planetary chess, the pirates effectively remove the queen from the board entirely. They isolate the variables so they can't interfere.
Right. And here, looking at the structural critique in our source material, I have to push back hard on the author's narrative choices.
Okay, let's hear it.
The source notes highlight that this specific island survival segment is heavily, heavily criticized by readers and reviewers.
It is very polarizing.
People complain that it is overly long, that it kills the pacing, and makes the middle of the book drag over 600 pages. So I have to ask you, from a critical storytelling perspective, why do this?
It's a fair question.
You have a brewing interstellar political war, you have a captured spaceman, you have radical factions clashing with state-sanctioned pirates, and you just hit the brakes to force the protagonist to spend hundreds of pages rubbing sticks together and foraging for berries. It seems like a massive, frustrating detour.
It absolutely reads like a pacing detour if you are only focused on the macro plot. But analytically, if we look at the thematic architecture of the novel, this island sequence serves a vital, irreplaceable purpose for Maya's character development.
Okay, sell me on it.
Think about what the island represents structurally. It entirely strips Maya of all political symbols.
What do you mean?
Well, there are no rads to hide behind, there are no Perkinites to fight, there are no high-tech promises from a space emissary. Even Rena is gone. The island reduces human existence to its absolute base biological reality.
Oh, I see.
It forces Maya to rely purely, 100%, on her own physical agency and her inherent VAR adaptability.
That makes sense. In the civilized world, her VAR status was always a handicap. But on a deserted island, her ability to adapt, to not rely on a hive's traditional knowledge, is literally the only thing that keeps her alive.
Exactly. This is a classic structural Bildungsroman element, the
Yeah.
painful necessity of the coming-of-age journey.
Right.
Up until this point on the island, Maya has largely been reactive. She reacted to being exiled, she reacted to the shipwreck, she reacted to finding Rena.
She's just bouncing from crisis to crisis.
Yes. To actually become a leader, capable of changing a planet, to truly internalize her own worth and power, she has to survive on her own merits, completely without the scaffolding of civilization. The deliberately slow pace of this section forces the reader to sit in the dirt with Maya as she slowly, painfully transforms from a reactive victim of her society into a proactive, highly capable survivor.
Okay, that framing actually makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
The fire has to burn away the impurities. She has to hit absolute rock bottom, relying purely on her own two hands and the begrudging partnership of Neuro and before she can rise up and actually wield power.
Exactly.
And when she does rise up, the narrative whiplash is incredible because her grueling, low-tech escape from that slow-paced island leads directly into the most technologically explosive, world-altering discovery of the entire text.
The author uses deliberate juxtaposition here. You go from the ultimate primitive struggle, trying to weave a basket or catch a fish, straight into the discovery of god-tier molecular manufacturing.
It's brilliant. So Maya, working alongside Naroing and a young male sailor named Broad who got swept up in all this, manages to secure a small boat. They escape the island and relentlessly track down the hidden pirate base to rescue Rena.
A classic infiltration mission.
Yeah, and during this rescue operation, they stumble upon a massive, heavily concealed blast door deep underground beneath the pirate fortress. They manage to open it, and it leads them into an ancient cavern containing something called the Jellicoe Former.
This specific discovery is where the hard science fiction extrapolation of the novel truly shines. The text explains that the Jellicoe Former is not a weapon, even though it's hidden like one.
Right.
It is an ancient, unbelievably advanced manufacturing facility left over from the original founders of the colony before the deliberate technological devolution.
The source notes describe it simply, but the implications are totally staggering. It's basically a gigantic, industrial-scale 3D printer, right?
It's a precursor to modern theoretical concepts of molecular replicators. The Jellicoe Former is a machine that can take raw, base matter dirt, rock, water, rearrange it at the molecular level, and produce absolutely anything you program it to build.
Wait, really?
Anything. Anything from complex machinery to food to advanced structural materials.
Stop and think about the economic implications of that for a second. We're talking about a society that literally spends generations hand-weaving its own clothes, hand-cutting stone for buildings, manually farming every single calorie.
Yes.
A machine that can democratize matter and print infinite resources on demand is utterly mind-blowing.
It is the ultimate threat to the political structure of Stratos. It represents the exact high-tech, post-scarcity past that the original founders deliberately suppressed.
Why suppress it, though?
Think about the mechanics of the hive system. You cannot have a perfectly stable, low-tech, rigidly enforced caste system if anyone, anywhere, can just walk up to a terminal and print infinite resources.
Oh, well, yeah.
The power of the weaver hive rests entirely on controlling clothing. The power of the builder hive rests on controlling shelter. The Jellicoe former instantly collapses the economic foundation of their political power.
It's the apple in the Garden of Eden, the ultimate forbidden knowledge.
Exactly.
And Rena, our astronaut who just got rescued, is the only person who knows exactly how to use it. And he doesn't want to print clothes. He wants to contact his people.
He has a bigger mission.
He fires up this ancient machine and actually programs it to build a fully functioning interstellar spaceship right there in the cavern. His plan is to launch, escape the planet's gravity well, get back to the human phylum, and report the ideological war happening on Stratos so they can send a massive fleet to intervene.
It sets up the classic sci-fi savior trope perfectly. The advanced spaceman is going to fly away and bring the cavalry to save the primitive locals. But the text aggressively subverts our expectations here.
It really does. The climax is an absolute tragedy. Rena gets the ship built, he launches it, but something goes wrong, whether it's ancient sabotage by the pirates, a flaw in the molecular printing process, or just the harsh reality of using untested ancient tech.
It failed.
The ship explodes shortly after takeoff, high in the atmosphere. Rena is killed instantly in a fiery flash.
This raises an important question. Why did the author kill off the man with all the answers?
It feels like a massive gut punch. You spend all this time rooting for him to make the call.
It is a gut punch, but thematically it is absolutely essential to the integrity of the novel. The critical analysis explains that Rena was never meant to be the savior. He was a catalyst.
So his job was just to wake them up.
Yes, he woke Maya up. He forced the society to look in the mirror. But an outsider fundamentally cannot save Stratos. The future of the planet must be shaped by the people who actually live there.
That makes a lot of sense.
Think about the geopolitical implications. If Rena had succeeded and brought the massive human phylum fleet, Stratos wouldn't have been liberated. They simply would have been conquered and assimilated by a different, overwhelmingly powerful outside force.
Creating one master for another.
Exactly. By dying, Rena removes the easy way out. He leaves the terrifying burden of choice entirely in the hands of the Stratons themselves.
Which brings us to the aftermath of this massive explosion. The dust literally and figuratively settles. The Planetary Equilibrium Authority finally cracks down, order is somewhat restored, the pirates are scattered.
The war cools down.
Maya is severely physically injured from the events, but she survives. And crucially, she's no longer just a lowly, ignored var who got kicked out of her hive. Through her association with Rena, her survival on the island, and her role in the climax, she's become a major, undeniable political symbol of resistance and change.
She has the attention of the entire global apparatus. She is no longer invisible.
She is the center of gravity. While she is recuperating in a hospital setting, she's approached by the powerful leaders of the male sailing clans.
And this leads to a crazy revelation.
Yes, in a wild, soapy twist that the book throws in, she actually discovers that one of these prominent maritime leaders is her biological father.
It's a very dramatic moment.
It is. And these leaders, recognizing the immense new political clout Maya wields among the populace, approach her with an offer. They offer her the ultimate prize in her society. They offer her the legal right, the resources, and the financial backing to found her very own clone clan.
They are basically attempting to co-opt her.
Buying her silence.
Yeah. They are offering her the exact specific thing she and Lei desperately dreamed of when they were 15 years old, standing on the docks. It is the ultimate validation from the system that originally rejected her. She could become a hive mother. She could achieve absolute, unshakable stability and wealth.
But she rejects it. I absolutely love this moment. She looks at the offer, she looks at the centuries of stagnation the clones represent, she looks at the violent extremism of the Perkinites who try to enforce that stagnation, and she flat out says no.
She turns it all down.
She rejects the wealth. She rejects founding a clan of identical copies. Instead, she chooses to have offspring the old way through unpredictable, messy, genetically varied sexual reproduction.
By making that specific biological choice, she becomes a profound walking embarrassment to the traditionalists.
A living protest.
Exactly. She actively refuses to play by their rules of success. But she no longer cares about their validation. She walks free from the hospital, resolved to use her new political influence to slowly, deliberately bring about dynamic, varied change to the planet.
It's such a powerful, resonant rejection of stagnation, and her choice opens up the text to a massive amount of deep thematic synthesis, which the source material breaks down beautifully in its final analysis section. we need to really dig into these debates because they are the core of why this book actually matters.
Yes, the critical analysis of the text in literary circles is highly polarized, which honestly is perfectly fitting for a book entirely about a polarized society.
Right. So let's look at the utopia versus dystopia debate, specifically regarding the feminist critiques of the novel. The source material outlines two very distinct camps here.
And we need to be careful to impartially explain both sides of this real-world literary debate.
Absolutely.
On one hand, some readers and sociologists view the book as a vital cautionary tale. They see it as a thought experiment exploring how the toxic, suppressive excesses of extreme historical patriarchy could hypothetically lead a separatist group to create the equally toxic excesses of extreme matriarchy.
Oh, I see.
In this view, the novel argues that any system, regardless of which gender is in charge, that suppresses individuality and biological variety for the sake of forced order inevitably becomes a dystopia.
So it's a critique of the mechanism of control itself,
Mm.
rather than who is actually holding the reins.
Yes, exactly.
And the other side of the debate.
The other side offers a strong critique of the author's choices, arguing the novel presents what they call an unflattering, almost reactionary view of feminism. Some critics label the book a post-feminist critique of feminism.
Interesting.
They argue that by specifically framing a female-dominated separatist society as inherently stagnant, technologically regressive, and violently oppressive to its own youth and to men, the author is unfairly critiquing the very concept of feminist utopian ideals.
Wow. Okay.
Again, our role isn't to take a side in this debate, but it is vital to understand that the source material intentionally provokes these deep ideological arguments about power, gender, and societal structure.
It absolutely does, and it forces the reader to confront their own biases. And that ties directly into another major literary critique mentioned in our sources, which is the debate over Maya's agency as a protagonist.
This is a big one.
The source notes bring up the totally valid criticism that Maya actually lacks proactive agency for a huge portion of the massive page count. I mean, think about it. She gets blown off course by a random storm. She gets kidnapped by Perkinites while just trying to be a good citizen. She gets dragged around by Rena. She gets stranded on an island by pirates.
She's a victim of circumstance.
Constantly. She is constantly, relentlessly being bounced around by macroscopic forces much larger than herself.
Which is a very common structural critique of sprawling epic sci-fi. The protagonist often just becomes a pinball in the world-building machine.
It's a fair point. But I would argue, and the thematic analysis in the source strongly supports this counter-argument, that her final decision in the hospital is the ultimate defining act of reclaiming that lost agency.
It's the payoff.
Exactly. Think about her entire arc. Her entire life, her genetics, the fact that she was a VAR, dictated her social class, her exile, her suffering, the environment, the seasons, dictated the biological behavior of everyone around her. But in the end, when she is finally handed the keys to the kingdom, when the system finally offers her the power she always wanted, she chooses to walk away. She exerts her agency to reject the system entirely.
Which perfectly encapsulates the final major theme the source highlights, the battle of nature versus nurture.
Oh, yeah.
The world of Stratos is heavily, suffocatingly steeped in biological determinism. The prevailing philosophy of the planet is that your genetics, whether you are a clone or a VAR, absolutely dictate your worth and your destiny. The environment dictates your physiological reactions.
But Maya shatters that mold. She proves that while biology and environment might set the stage and might even build the cage you are trapped in, conscious individual choice is what actually writes the ending.
She looks at the perfect, painless comfort of the clone hive, and she actively chooses the friction, the pain, and the unpredictability of variety.
So we've talked about space pirates, parthenogenetic cloning, and molecular 3D printers. What does this all mean for you, the listener, sitting in traffic or folding your laundry? We obviously aren't fighting for survival on an alien world.
Probably not.
But if you strip away the sci-fi trappings every single day, you and I constantly face that exact same tension Maya faced. We constantly have to navigate the powerful magnetic pull between wanting the comfort of absolute stability and needing the friction of variety to actually grow.
It's a universal human struggle.
It is. Think about your own life. Think about staying in the job you know you've outgrown just because the paycheck is predictable. Think about staying in the comfortable routine just because, well, that's how I've always done it. Growth is inherently uncomfortable. Progress requires risk. To actually evolve, it requires actively choosing to be the VAR.
It requires recognizing when your own personal systems have become stagnant and having the courage to step outside the safety of your own hive.
Exactly. Thank you for taking the time to explore this incredibly dense, complex, and provocative world with us today. It is a text that doesn't offer easy answers, but instead asks deeply uncomfortable questions about the true value of difference, the hidden costs of comfort, and the actual meaning of freedom.
It serves as a powerful reminder that a perfectly stable, unchanging system is, more often than not, a dead system. Life requires motion.
I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to chew on, based on the book's deliberately ambiguous, open-ended conclusion. If you suddenly woke up tomorrow and found yourself existing in a perfectly stable, totally peaceful, but completely rigidly stagnant life, would you have the courage to be the VAR? Would you willingly choose the messy, unpredictable, painful path of variety, even if it meant losing every single comfort you knew? It's something to think about the next time you catch yourself doing things just because that's how they've always been done.